These are my boxer briefs that I got in preparation for mine and Mary's first night together. I guess it just shows off your package more when you wear them.
Put that thing away, Brandon. Mary's grandparents are right next door, for God's sake. Also, you're in for a bit of a disappointment because Mary's a good Catholic girl, remember?
I still haven't told Brandan that they want me to wait to have sex until we get married, so that's a lot of pressure to me.
Of course you haven't told him. What's new? Poor Brandan. He was hoping to put those boxer briefs to good use. Now, before we dive into the lack of action, let's rewind back to the start of the episode. So, when we left Brandan and Mary last week, Mary had just blindsided Brandan about her family rules when it comes to kissing and hugging. Brandan had no clue that the hugs and kisses he was giving her were against the rules. That is, until he was informed by Mary's brother. And that has now left him in a very awkward position with Mary's grandfather. So we join them in this episode as Mary's granddad demands to know what happened when they met at the airport.
He's asking what we're doing when we first met on the airport.
Oh, I got to the airport and me and Mary, we met. We talked with Brother Mar and then we drove here.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank God Mary's grandparents don't speak English, because that wasn't a convincing answer. Mary looks guilty, and even her brother is side-eyeing his grandma. The whole scenario, the whole situation is just bizarre. And to be honest, it's really sad that Mary's put Brandan in this position with absolutely no warning, where he feels he needs to lie to her grandparents. Hardly a great start to his relationship with them.
Hopefully me and Mary can still be romantic with each other in private because we're about to spend our first night together. We've talked a lot about what we want it to be like.
Yeah, you might need to rethink those plans, Brandan, because there's something that Mary hasn't told you. Again, how very in character. You see, regardless of what you got up to on FaceTime, Mary's not like that. You've got the wrong impression of her, Brandan. She's a good girl. No sex before marriage. I mean, talk about leading the poor guy on. Mary's just picking and choosing what information she wants to share. Given that, as Brandan says, they've spent so much time talking about what their first time is going to be like, it's strange that she forgot to mention she's not going to do anything with him until after he puts a ring on her finger. It's a big detail to just forget. Mary must know that Brandan's expecting intimacy tonight, but even now, she still hasn't bothered to be honest with him. But we'll get into that a little later on. For now, it's finally time for Brandan to get to see the house he's spent his entire life savings on.
There's a lot of spider web, by the way.
Wow. Yeah.
And you don't have hot and cold water here. I just can boil it.
No big deal.
Now, there's clearly still a lot of work that needs to be done to the house. It's not yet finished. But what isn't clear is how exactly they're going to pay for the work. Like, is Brandan intending to get a job in the Philippines, even though he doesn't speak the language? He's already told us that he only has a couple of $100 left in his account. It really will be interesting to see what they do for money. But for now, the biggest immediate adjustment for him will be learning how to coexist in this house with all the bugs, insects and geckos that also call it home.
I think the house is very pretty. We need to get an exterminator out here for sure, but I can deal with bugs until then. I've lived in a trailer home. I've lived in a shed.
It's refreshing to see Brandan unfazed by all of this. He explains how this is actually a step up from some of his previous homes, from trailer homes and sheds to living in an RV and even living in his car. It really does sound like Brandan's had it tough. Having no hot water really doesn't faze him. And I think that mentality will come in handy. It will help him acclimatise and adjust to his new life in the Philippines. He certainly seems to be open to trying new things. Like, for example, Filipino food.
Try the fried chicken of Filipino.
Who made this?
Grandma.
You made this?
Yeah, good job.
Yeah, he tried every food with no hesitation. He enjoyed them, and considering how he's never left America before, it's nice to see him embrace this new culture. But he's had a really long journey. He's tired, so he wants to call it a night. In his mind, he's probably already daydreaming about what he and Mary are going to get up to. Except Mary has once again forgotten to tell him something. Something very important.
Is it okay if we get ready for calling it a night?
You need to ask their permission first.
Look, for those of us watching in the Western world, this is undoubtedly a strange situation. After all, Brandan's paying for the house they all live in. He's flown thousands of miles to be with the woman he loves. It really feels like he shouldn't have to ask for permission for these things. But, of course, that's the Western lens. When you look at this from an Eastern perspective, well, it's totally different. In many countries, extended family homes where children look after parents or grandparents is totally normal. And as far as the permission thing goes, well, that's more about respect. It's a way of acknowledging the grandparents' authority. It's about making a good impression, showing them that you value their traditions and their conservative ways.
It's not that my grandparents doesn't want us to share a room or to hug or kiss. It's that they just want me and Brandan to ask permission before to respect them.
What we really need to discuss is why Mary's allowed Brandan to just stumble into the house and have to learn things along the way. I mean, the pair were on a 24/7 video call. Surely she could have spared a minute or two to fill him in on the expectations her grandparents have. It certainly would have helped to stop him feeling so blindsided after travelling for 2 days, only to be told, oh, no, you can't even hold her hand. No touching, no hugging, and certainly no kissing. I mean, come on, Mary really should have briefed him.
Lola?
Oh.
Lolo? Is it okay if I share a room with your granddaughter, Mary?
She said it's okay for us to share a room, but we can't make love.
Oh, okay.
The fact that this conversation is happening with the whole family standing in the kitchen is so awkward. And whilst Brandan's being polite in person, his frustration is definitely leaking through. He reveals that Mary's grandparents weren't originally going to live with them. It was only when a typhoon destroyed their home that they had to move in. And whilst he's happy that he can shelter them, you can definitely tell that he wishes they weren't there. It's been 2 years of sexual tension with Mary, and grandparents or no grandparents, secretly he's still hoping he might still have a chance.
I'm still hoping that we're gonna have some sort of romantic, steamy intimacy or something going on tonight.
Now, from Brandan's perspective, it doesn't exactly seem like Mary follows her grandparents' rules. So it's no surprise that this is what he's thinking. But what he doesn't realise, and what Mary hasn't been honest with him about, is that Mary's reluctance to have sex isn't necessarily because of her grandparents, it's her religion. And that isn't something that's going to change regardless of what underpants he's rocking.
These are my boxer briefs that I got in preparation for mine and Mary's first night together. I guess it just shows off your package more when you wear them.
Right, okay, I think from that we can all tell that Brandan needs a little bit of cushioning, a little bit of padding down below. Don't worry, buddy, it's not about the size of the tool, it's how you use it. But that's not something you're going to have to worry about anytime soon. Now, Brandan does tell us that they were very active sexually over the phone, but I really don't want to hear it.
We were definitely very active as far as phone sex goes, almost every day.
Please make it stop. Now, finally, after all of that, the time has come for them to get into bed. Brandan awkwardly asks Mary how she sees the night going, and she tells him that she just wants to sleep. She's actually feeling really nervous.
You're nervous, about being intimate in general?
I think I'm not ready yet.
That's understandable.
What's interesting here is that Mary isn't bringing up her religious beliefs. She talks about how different it is to be intimate over the phone versus in person. She's nervous. Remember, she's a virgin. This is a very big deal for her. And privately, she reveals that she's definitely feeling the pressure.
I still haven't told Brandan that they want me to wait to have sex until we get married, so that's a lot of pressure to me.
Now, the way she says that seems to imply that Mary's grandparents are more religious than she is. Mary's just following their lead. Now, of course, Mary's absolutely entitled to say no, regardless of what her reason is. But where the issue lies is this continuous habit she has of forgetting to tell him. Like, this is meant to be a partnership. Just be honest with Brandan, even about those sensitive topics.
I'm disappointed, but I'm just trying to be respectful. I've waited over 2 years to be with her, and I can wait a little longer.
I feel like Mary maybe fears telling Brandan her stance on sex because she's worried it might be a deal breaker for him. But if she thinks that after leaving everything behind and moving to the Philippines, Brandan would just leave her over this, well, that shows a huge lack of trust. I guess considering her insecurity and trust issues, that's not really a surprise to anyone. But she tells Brandan he better turn round because they're not even going to face each other while they sleep tonight. And Brandan is now starting to get upset.
She's giving off a vibe here in person, and I should be allowed to at least be facing her and holding her and cuddling with her, but I can't even do that.
Brandan, sorry mate, but you're not entitled to intimacy just because you've spent money on Mary. That is not how it works. But that being said, Mary's allowed him to have all these dreams and fantasies about them being together, knowing that the reality would be very different. The question is, what else is going to be different? Because you get the feeling this isn't the only thing Mary hasn't exactly been honest about.